Okay, hello once again. My name is Piotr Alexeyev, and I'm going to present you today a lecture about HTML and CSS. Currently, with this lecture, I'm going to show you some basics of HTML. I'm going to present you some quite fresh material related to HTML5. Also, I'm going to present you some material about CSS and CSS version 3. And also, I would like to emphasize some points related to HTML forms, what you will required for you from your tasks. So you are going to pay more attention to HTML forms. Today, I'm going to start from the introduction of HTML, what it is, some brief history, not comprehensive, of course, some guidelines, some quite basic information of this. Also, quite simple topic is related to HTML basic elements. I'm going to show you about basic markup, which can be used in HTML. And later, I'm going to show you some forms, which I previously said, which I'm going to emphasize your attention on this. Later, I'm going to introduce you CSS, which is probably might be useful for your work as well. And here, with this topic, with introduction of CSS, I'm going to present you some basic material, how it's organized, its basic structure, and how basically it can be used. In the next topic, I'm going to show you some methods of using offline CSS to general elements of HTML. And I'm going to finish up with two topics, quite small one. One is related to layout with general HTML tags, which is more even related to versions of HTML previous to HTML5. And finally, I'm going to end up with some changes that are going to be what you can use in your applications if you want to use HTML5 layouts. So let's start with introduction to HTML. So probably most of you know what HTML is, a markup, hypertext markup language, and it's supposed to be designed for creating and describing the structure of HTML documents, what you can see in browser. So this structure of these documents is described by the structure of some elements, and each element consists of one or two tags. If there are two tags, one of them is opening, another is closing, and if there's only one tag in later versions of HTML and XHTML, this tag is supposed to be also an opening and closing at the same moment. The basic structure of a typical HTML document is presented with this picture. So you can see that the HTML document starts with a tag HTML and finishes with closing tag of this HTML. It consists of two portions. The first one is head, which describes some meta information of this document. Currently, you can see that this information contains just the title of this document. This title is presented when browser window is in title of the browser window, or if you have tabs in your browser, it will be highlighted in the title of the tab. The second portion is body. It contains the visible elements, what you're going to be shown in the browser. Basically, it shows just text. And currently, you can see there's a header element, which contains some basic information about some title of some text. There might be several of these headers in the same document. And also some other information is contained in this text named P, which is supposed to be paragraph. In detail, we can discuss some issues of text. So you can see what most texts have opening and closing. Most elements of HTML have opening and closing tags, and some of them have just opening and closing tags in the same tag, like BR. You can see it here. Also, elements inside of text, it can even contain attributes, which is supposed to be composed from attribute name and attribute value. For example, in this picture, you can see that this attribute provides some additional knowledge about this particular paragraph, and it says that the language of this paragraph is English, and specifically to Britain, Great Britain. That's why it's GB. But sometimes you can even say what this English version of English is British. Let me briefly describe you some history of HTML and some of its versions. Well, of course, I can start with very early versions, but I suppose it's not very popular now. That's why I'm going to show you some more or less related versions to the current state of the web technologies. The more or less active version of HTML is version 4.01. And there's another version of HTML which is called XHTML. You can see what the HTML document, they have some relations to XML documents. Have anybody of you used XML previously? Just say I. Okay, at least some of you know this. Then there was then this standard of XHTML was created. There was an idea of providing some relationship between HTML and XML. So XHTML contains more strict rules than basic HTML has. And also, it also has 3 different versions, which are also related to HTML 4.01. So I will get back to them a bit later. So I can say that there are 3 of these versions because there was proposed 3 different levels of comparison to the previous versions. So the first one is strict. The strict version requires very, very comprehensive rules to be kept. The transitional version is less strict, so you more free with your abilities with this version. For example, you are allowed to use some tags which is not allowed to be used in a strict version of this XHTML. And the frame set version is used quite rare because it provides ability to use frames which are usually not used in web technologies now currently. And the last item of this slide is HTML5, which is quite popular now because it was developed for several last years. And finally, last year was ended up with a candidate recommendation. So currently, we finally have some sort of more or less standard for HTML5. According to different versions of HTML, the browser what you're using have to have an ability to understand which currently version of HTML he has currently. And this can be done by providing some specific doc type element, which is a starting element of HTML document. For HTML5, this doc type is very simple. You can see it here. For the previous versions of HTML or XHTML, this is more comprehensive. It contains a link to specific structure, the specific scheme of this document. And by parsing these lines, browser knows which version currently you use in your HTML. With HTML, I have to also say you some special information about basics of its markup. Of course, you can use commands in HTML document like this. You can define them like this. So this is not very problematic. Also, you probably noticed that HTML tags, they started with these brackets, so some sort of brackets. And you can see that these brackets currently used to create a comment. White space in HTML document is ignored. What does it mean? It means that if you would like to have several spaces, for example, in your text, all of these spaces will be ignored except the first one. So basically, if you will put several spaces in the sentence, you will see only one of them. The same rule applies, for example, to line breaks. Doesn't matter if it's Linux line breaks or Windows line breaks, it's the same. So white spaces ignore. So if you want to put several spaces in your sentence, you have to use escaped characters. And we are going to these escaped characters a bit later. Also, you can see that every element in HTML can have two special attributes, an ID and a class. An ID attribute can be used to HTML JavaScript to address to this specific element. Also, this attribute can be used in CSS to provide some special guidelines, for example, for fonts or colors for this specific element. The class is related to this element, but it only used for CSS connections. Also, I can say the difference between ID and class is that ID, the value of ID element should be unique within your HTML document. Class values, elements of the values of attribute class, and do not have to be unique within your document. Also, every element can be blocked in united in several specific elements, which are known as div and span. What's the difference between these two elements? The first one, div, is supposed to be some sort of block combination of elements, which is supposed to be organized more or less vertically. The span element is so-called inline element of HTML, which is supposed to be organized as more or less horizontal. So you see the difference. These elements more or less related, but they are a bit different. Additionally, I can say that, for example, element paragraph is block element because paragraphs are organized in a stack like this, usually. But, for example, some other elements which highlight some sort of bold portions of paragraph, they are inline elements because you are putting them inside of this paragraph and they are organized like this. Finishing with some basic words about HTML, I have to say some words about meta information, what should be put in the head element of HTML document. You can use their special text called meta. Meta is subscription or a link to meta information, which can be treated like information about information. So with meta information, you provide some sort of additional information to your document. So what exactly information you can put there in this meta text? You can provide some sort of description of your HTML document and where this description can go. Anybody can say where it usually goes, where you see these descriptions. This is meta information. You cannot see it in a browser window usually, but with web, where you can find these descriptions. Yes? Yes, good. Yes, for example, with Google search, you can see this description related to each link of your search results. So basically, this information is acquired to, for example, search engines. The keywords is another information you can provide for your document, but this does not use it. So it's used more rare than the description. Another information, sort of information is robots, and you can provide some information about, for example, how often this page should be crawled by the search engine, or does it need to be crawled at all? With additional attributes of meta text HTTP equif, you can provide additional information, for example, for page caching, if you wish. And of course, don't forget to use this attribute content, because if you will provide just basically name equal to description, you have to provide content equal to the exact content inside. method tag. Previously, I just talked briefly about escaped characters. You can see the table of these characters here. So we can start with less and greater signs. Why? Because they're actually used in text. So if you want to put them in your paragraphs, in your text, you have to provide them somehow. So if you would put something like this or like this in your HTML, you will get these results on the screen. Basically, with this table, I did not provide a character which can be used for space. What sort of these escaped characters can be used for space? Who knows?
BSP.
Yes, it's NBSP. Also, don't forget, but each escaped character starts with the symbol of ampersand. Of course, this table is not comprehensive. You can find more of these escaped characters in the web. It's not that problematic for you. Actually, if you wish to find more additional information about HTML, it's not a big problem because there are tons of information related to HTML in web. There are lots of books related to HTML. But I would like to address you to official documentation in the site of w3.org related to HTML version 4 and HTML5. Also, if you would like to have some additional sort of teaching courses or tutorials about HTML, you can take one of these. Also, it's not very problematic to find another ones if you don't like them, for example, by basically Googling. It's not a problem. Also, if you would like to have books, you can go downstairs to our library. There are lots of books, but personally, I can recommend you these two ones. The first one, I would like to recommend you to go to this website because I'm going to present some examples related to these books from this website today. And this book is quite interesting because it's presented like a presentation and does not contain lots of words. It contains lots of good information, good guidelines from a website developer. And also it contains some information about HTML5, so it's quite fresh. And the last one is also quite useful. I'm also recommending you to try it. So please, if you have an ability, try to go to this HTML and CSS book.com and browse to examples to these books. I'm going to show you some examples later. All right, do I have to leave this slide a bit more? Or, okay, so nobody against if I will change the slide. Also, if you are going to design some HTML, you have to have some tools. But basically, these tools are not very comprehensive. You can start and end with a basic notepad or some related text editor and a browser. Of course, I would recommend you to have several browsers installed on your computer because different browsers displays the same HTML a bit differently, sometimes dramatically differently. So if you have several browsers, you can check if your HTML is displayed in all of these browsers correctly. If you would like to have special Vic editor or some other editor for HTML, you can go to this page in Wikipedia and find list of these tools, quite comprehensive list. So probably you will find what you were looking for there. Also, for HTML and also for JavaScript development, I recommend you to have some additional tools, some additional browser add-ins. The first one is a special debugger for JavaScript. It also provides an ability to see HTTP traffic, and I'm going to also show it to you today. This is called Fiddler. And another one is a special tool for browsers Chrome and Firefox, which allows you which provides you additional features for layout development of HTML. Okay, so quite enough information for you, perhaps. Don't mind if I'll move to the next slide. All right. Okay, now let's go to the second part of our lecture, where this is quite simple part, and I'm going to show you some basics of usually elements of HTML. Well, probably everybody knows what in HTML you can use several headings. So there are at least 6 of them, and the most important of them is the first one, and this is the least important. So the level of this heading is some sort of importance of this level, of this heading. Also, I can recommend you to use just basic one H1 header for your page for purposes of search engine optimization. Well, paragraphs, we saw already how to design them. So paragraphs are quite simple. This is just basic element with tag P. Of course, both headers and paragraphs they have opening and closing tags. So probably it's quite obvious. Another tag is bold. Another tag is italic. Probably there's no need to describe it more. Additionally, I can just say that both bold and italic they are inline elements, but paragraph is still block element. Who knows what is superscript and subscript? How can you use them, for example, for something? Sorry? Yes, you can use subscript for depicting the power of a specific number, and subscript, for example, you can use quite frequently in chemical formulas. So it's quite obvious. A line break. This is additional. This is additional tag which allows you to break line in, for example, in any text, in any paragraph within it, and also horizontal line. Well, probably there's no need for any additional comments here. Semantic markup. It's not that obvious. You can use special element strong to provide some sort of important, to highlight some important information of your paragraph, like, for example, warning. Another way of emphasize attention to your some portion of your paragraph is emphasize it with element EM. Usually, emphasized elements are depicted by italic, and important strong elements they are usually shown as bold in browsers. Also, some questions? Sorry. No? Okay. You can use some citations and quotes in your paragraphs, so you can use block quote to design quite long quotes, which is a block element block quote, or you can use inline element block for short quotes in one paragraph, which is basically element Q. Also, you can use abbreviations. What is an abbreviation? You can use some sort of abbreviation. For example, HTML is an abbreviation. And you can put additional element ABVR and provide an attribute title within this element, which will show, for example, a description of this abbreviation, like hypertext markup language. And this hypertext markup language will be shown when you hover with mouse this particular abbreviated text. Also, you can use citation, which is not the same as block quote and Q, because It's some sort of relationship to specific book. So if you want to address the specific name of the book, you can use this site element. An address element can be used to highlight specific address information like normal post address or email address. It's up to you. Also, you can use inserted and deleted text. These portions of your paragraph or text are usually shown as striked out or underscored items. And there's another ability to show some text as striked out. It's not relevant text. What's the difference with in a deleted and not relevant text? Deleted text, it's deleted text. But not relevant, it might be like an old price with some sort of web shop. You understand what I'm talking about? It's like a discount. The previous price is not relevant anymore. We're just going to strike it out. That's what it's going to be used. One can say why this semantic markup is used, why it should be useful, because with the previous slide I showed you very basic ways of highlighting some elements in your paragraph. These elements are more relevant to specific information what they're supposed to be used for. And also, this allows to use it better for search engine optimization. Let me go further with lists. Probably everybody saw ordered and unordered lists with web pages, and it's not very hard to design these lists. You can just have to have some sort of outer tag for ordered list, which is OL, and place inside of this tag list items. And each list item is composed from two tags, opening and closing, and the text between this opening and closing tags will be shown in the list. An ordered list, and what's the difference between ordered and unordered lists? Well, the first one, they have a bit different tags, and the second one, they are shown a bit differently, because ordered lists, they're shown with some numbers on the left, and unordered lists, they're shown with bullets on the left. And who have ever seen definition lists? And why can you use them? Why it's useful? Okay, so the definition list is used to provide some list of definitions. It's quite obvious. And you can define not just the whole list, but some sort of term and a definition for this term. Like the term might be abbreviation, and definition for this term might be explanation of this abbreviation or something else. And this will be shown more or less related to unordered lists. So if you wish to see a specific example of definition list, you can find them yourself within this this website for this book, and you can find the specific example for definition lists. Also, probably most of you saw that all lists might be embedded inside of them, so they might be nested. So one list can be inserted into another list. In this case, the inserted list might be called like a sublist or nested list. Links, quite useful element of HTML. Another the name is anchor. Why anchor? Well, probably because it relates to another content somewhere else. So you can see now why this element has tag A, because it's anchor. And you can place with attribute href a specific URL, or this might be absolute or relative URL. So it might be absolute if you are browsing to another site, and relative if you are browsing within your site. Also, you can have this link with special mail to markup here instead of URL, and provide a name of a specific mailbox there, and by clicking on this link, you will have an opening window of your mail application, which allows you to send some specific information to this specific email. And also you can open a link in a new window by providing additional attribute target like this. And another additional information you can specify with an anchor is title. It may be shown if you hover this link with mouser. Also, this title might be useful for search engine optimization. Okay, any questions? Perhaps not. What else can I say about links? I can say about links to bookmarks within, for example, your document. Probably you saw several times when you have a very, very long document in your browser, and initially you have there in the top of this document some sort of table of contents. And by clicking the link in this table of contents, you can browse to specific related item of this table of contents. So this organized like this. You have this link here with href, and here you have some sort of bookmark. And you can see that this bookmark is organized with attribute ID. So this and these are the same. Also, you are able to have a link to another web page, to a specific part of this web page even in another website. For example, you can go briefly to the history of HTML by going to this link. Additionally, I can say that these bookmarks are quite useful, for example, with Ajax or Ajax. So someone called it Ajax, someone called it Ajax. Why these bookmarks are useful for Ajax? Who knows? They are quite useful if you want to activate a back button in your browser with Ajax. Because this button will be activated only if your browser was browsed to another web page. If something was changed in the URL, the string of your browser. So you can change it by using a different bookmark within your URL of your web page. Understand? All right. And now images. Well, probably everybody knows how to use images. You have to use tag img, and you have to provide some attributes like src, the URL to the image. Well, it's quite same as URL to in links, in anchors. Also, you have to provide an alternative name for this image. Why it's quite useful? It might be useful if the browser is unable to show your picture. In all browsers, usually people try to switch off these images because they've been loaded for a very long time. But now internet connection is more or less okay, and people still unable to see images for some reason. For example, if there will be some problems with connection still. So if connection will be broken, the user will be unable to see your image. And even if everything is okay with the browser and with the connection within your web server and the website, this attribute is still useful. Why? Yes. Yes, of course, for blind people or disabled people. So this is very useful command, because when you're designing a web page, when you're designing an HTML page, doesn't matter. You have to not just think about some sort of usual people who have eyes, who have mouser and so on, who have mouse and so on. You have to think about disabled people who will be able to just listen with a screen speaker your web page. So how this screen speaker will be able to describe your picture? Only by taking some sort of information from alternative alternative attribute. Sorry?
For the source element also it is used to
what, sorry?
Source element also read the alt attributes of the image. Like Google. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. Search engines, they also can use this information. So, of course, yes. Yeah, sure. But you can also provide an additional information about your image with a title attribute, which will be shown, for example, if you hover over the image. Also, it's quite useful to put exact size of your image with attribute height and width. Why? Because if your image has a big size, it cannot be downloaded to your web browser immediately. So with your layout, the image will be, until it loaded, will take right place if you will specify these attributes. And if not, well, not. Also, you have an alternative by providing a size for this particular image with CSS, which might be also useful, for example, if your website have images with specific size only. So by using specific style, you can provide specific size of your image. And outdated way of positioning of your image is providing additional information with align attribute. But now it's more useful to use CSS, of course. With HTML5, there have been added additional feature for images. For example, you are able to describe a figure with a description and image. So you can make it like this. You have special element with tag figure, and within this tag, inside of it, you can put this image with a img tag and provide thick caption, a caption for this figure with the specific elements. All right? Quite obvious from my point of view. But what can be useful for you if you are working with your tasks? Where can you find images? Of course, you can take a photo yourself. You can draw something in different applications. But it's also possible to borrow up or take already ready-made images just to describe some products or your website, or just to provide special mood for your visitors. So I recommend you to use these links to get some images, but don't forget to think about the license, because some of these images, they might be even free, some of them not for free, some of them royalty free, but not forget to check the license, because some of them might be not royalty free for commercial use. Should just be careful, please. Now let's go to the table. Okay, probably we should have to take a little break. Yes? Okay, let's take a break. All right, it's time to continue. And as I asked you, I'm going to go a bit faster. Okay? Okay, probably for this example, there's no questions. Creating a table is very, very simple and obvious. But with spanning of rows and columns, probably there's no problem either. Yes? Probably yes. So if there will be a just question, just don't hesitate to raise a hand and ask. And now with more comprehensive example, with headers and parts of the table, because with tag th we are able to highlight special header of the page, of a table. For example, these headers here are shown with bold. And also we are able to specify which part of our table is its header, which part of it is body, and which part of it is footer. Why? Just basically we can use this for our CSS connection. And also I can say that, for example, here this is not very obvious, but it's also possible to use th text with body to provide what, for example, the first column is also header, some sort of header. Okay. The outdated formatting for tables contains border, background, width, and spacing. It still probably can be found in some layouts, but I do not recommend you to use it. But anyway, you can see how you can just specify specific width for an element of your table, and color and whatever you wish. Now let's find out with HTML forms, which is more useful for you for your big work. So what is a form for? The purpose of the form is to collect some data from the user or from the visitor of your website and to send this information to web server. Why this is needed? This is needed because the only way within HTTP protocol to provide some data to the server is to send their request. With forms, browsers allows you to send some additional information with requests to the server. For example, it allows you to specify this information with request with name post. So what sort of information you can provide from your browser to your web server? You can provide some text information with basic single line text, with password input, which is also single line text usually. I haven't seen multi-line passwords yet. Text area might be also used as multi-line text. Some selection might be used like radial button, check button, drop-down list, and basic list boxes. And also some other information submitted with basic push buttons like submit buttons and image buttons, which are also almost the same, but they have different appearance. And file uploads, which are also very useful in some cases. How it basically works? Works quite simple. We have some sort of form which contains some elements, some, let's say, controls, if you wish to have this word, and we have a submit button, one of these controls. User specifies some basic information what we ask him for. He presses submit button, and the browser at the moment creates a new HTTP request, and some information what he or she specified here is contained within this request, and this request is sent to the server. Web server receives this request and this information as well. It can provide us additional or alternative page where this information may be utilized somehow. Also, this information might be stored somewhere in the web server in a database, for example. So it's quite easy to see. And also it's possible to see what exactly goes from the client to server, and you can just track this HTTP request. So if you're interested, I can show you how you can see what exactly going on out there. Do you want it? Probably yes. I assume so. So I'm going to use this tool I call Fiddler with some basic example of what I showed you with this book. So you can just go to Code Examples and yes, go to Forms, and well, basically you can just go to the last one, the example. This is a form and it contains some information, so you can see its source code, you can see how it's supposed to be composed. So you can see the form tag here. Can you see it? Do I have to make it bigger? No? Okay. So you can see that this form will send its request to this URL with method get. So it's also possible to submit it with method post. So by the way, what's the difference between get and post? Sorry? So post, you said that post is for fetching the information. Well, the purpose is different usually, yes. But from the perspective of the request, because this request is just basic text information, the difference is only what the method post allows you to specify to send more information to them than method get allows you to do. So you can see that we have here this form. And also I have here some sort of interesting tool called Fiddler. I say it before. I'm going to use it, and I can see now with this tool what's supposed to be. I'm going to send some information and going to push button submit. Actually, this is just basic reply from some server, and I can see what this information was transferred there with Fiddler, for example. So I can see there was a request get, and there is information about my form here with this line. Probably it's not very easy to see. I will show it a bit more. So you can see it here. See it, yeah? This is it. That was what I submitted there. Also, it's possible. This is just basic headers, and you can just see what's supposed to be there, and you can see the another get method, another request. So you can see what's happened there. Oh yes. So you can see that this information can be just basically tracked with some sort of these tools. The form structure is quite simple. You also previously saw it brief. So you have to use the tag form and provide some attributes for it: an action, a target URL, a method, which usually get or post, and optionally you can specify an ID if you would like to. Which information you can use, which controls you can use. Basic text input is created by input tag, and it's obligatory to specify attribute type equal text. So it's quite easy to specify. So probably the most information is quite obvious. Yes. The password input is almost like the same as the previous one. The difference is what the obligatory attribute type is password, and other attributes are the same. Well, it's also quite obvious. With multi-line text input, you have to use a tag text area, and attributes for it are the same as the previous one. But also you can specify its size in columns and rows, in horizontal and vertical. But it's better to use CSS instead of it. The radio button, well, it's not the radio what you can listen, but it's a button where you can choose one option from several options. It's also composed from the tag input, but it requires an attribute type equal to radio. Some special attributes for this element are the following: the value. So the value is the so-called information what is going to be sent to the web server if this button will be selected. This one, checked, equal to checked, is usually used if you want to specify what this particular radio button will be checked initially. And the name, well, name is already has been used previously, but you have to specify the same name for the radio buttons group. Because if you are just able to select just one radio button from this particular group, which is defined by this name attribute. A checkbox is quite related to radio button. The difference is what you are able to select several checkboxes in the same group. But basically, with radio buttons and checkboxes, don't forget that they are supposed to be an answers for specific questions. So you have some sort of question, and you have answers with these radio buttons and checkboxes, and they have to be in the same group. Drop-down list box, probably also saw lots of them several times. It's composed with element select, and well, it's also quite related to radio buttons. So the difference between radio buttons and drop-down list box is just basically appearance usually, but they are used for a bit different purposes. If you want to use radio buttons, you have some sort of a limited list of items to choose from. But if you have a drop-down list, you can have a very, very long list of these items, which is not very useful to specify with radio buttons. Another interesting option of using selection tag is list box, because it allows you to show not just only one selected item from the list, but it allows you to show several items from this list. And also by using this attribute multiple, you are able to select several items in this list by holding Control button and selecting them by mouse click buttons. Also, it's also possible in Apple by holding this special button there. File input. Well, this is quite simple because it's composed from the same well-known tag input, but it requires obligatory attribute type equal to file. It will be shown like a small text line with a button browse. You can click this button and you will see an open file box. Unfortunately, you're unable to specify an extension for specific file types with this file input element, but so you will always have this all files option there selected. But anyway, this is quite interesting, an interesting element. A submit button is required if you wish to finally send some collected information from your web form to the web server. So without this button, you are unable to send this information. It's also composed from famous tag input. The difference is the type is submit. So probably it's quite obvious. Image button is almost the same as basic button, submit button. The difference is what you're able to specify some image, which will be shown instead of basic button image in the browser. And you can use the same attributes as for tag ing. The element button is also maybe utilized by you. You can use it to combine some sort of image with text in your web form. For example, like this. Probably quite obvious. In forms, some users would like to have some hidden fields. So these fields are composed from well-known input tag with a special attribute hidden type equal to hidden. So why these hidden fields required? Some of them used to store some page state, very basic state. And if one of them familiar, for example, with ASP.NET, you will know what one of features or advantages or disadvantages of ASP.NET is using view state. And view state is some sort of ability to store some state of user elements, of user controls in your web page. And this state is stored in this type of field, in hidden field. Sometimes this hidden field became very, very huge because it contains too much of information. So you can basically see that this contents of this field can be in several kilobytes, for example. So it might be even bigger than the whole page. So this is disadvantage, but advantage is that you're able to store there some state. Just don't forget that HTTP itself is stateless. But this is not HTTP, this is HTML. A label. Interesting element. Many designers, they omit this element, but I recommend you to use it. Why this element might be useful? It allows you to provide some, for example, for radio buttons, ability to click not just exactly this round box there, but you will be able to click on the name of this button. And this button will be selected. So this element is required if you want to select specific correspondent element, correspondent control, by clicking the button on this label text. Quite useful. So you can try this example of code and you will see how it works. Much more useful for radio buttons, for example. Another interesting feature of HTML forms is control groups. Also, many designers, I don't know why they omit this element, but this is quite useful if you wish to group some elements together to allow the user to provide related information to these elements. Exactly. So defined by field set element and legend element. With HTML5, you're able to perform some sort of form validation. It's checking for consistencies of data which user provided with your form. With previous version of HTML, you are required to use, for example, JavaScript for this on the client side, or if you do not use JavaScript, you will be able to control or validate data only in server side, and user usually don't like this because he or she will have to wait while he will receive response from the server with incorrect data. Just probably most of you saw this, were in this situation where you filled their very long form and press submit button, and after a while you received the information that some information was inconsistent, and additionally all your data was resetted back in the form. So basically user don't like this. So it will be more useful for you if you will have information what you feel something wrong immediately before the request was sent to the server. With HTML5, it's also possible quite easily. For example, you can specify that specific input elements are required to be filled. Unfortunately, this doesn't work in all browsers, but this works, for example, in Chrome. You can check it out, and with these examples from this book I showed to you, so you can try this example in Chrome, for example. Another HTML5 feature is data input, also composed from tag input, sorry, and well, it's quite obvious. If you wish, I can show you how it works. Would you like to? Yes, I see someone said yes, and I'm going to show you with this one. So, for example, data input. This is it. I'm sorry, this is a Russian version of the browser. I don't know how to change it back, but you can see this is just basically this element. I can select specific date, and this is supposed to be here. Yes, you can see the source code. So this is quite obvious. This is input type date, and this is it. So it's not very, very complex. Another feature of HTML5 is ability to verify email and URL input data. Well, this is also almost the same. So it basically checks if specified URL or email are correct. And the search input is also possible to specify with HTML5. Also quite useful additional attribute for input tag is placeholder. It specifies some text which is supposed to be shown with this element before user clicks on it. So you can just with this placeholder you can specify, for example, enter name here, and this will be shown until the person will click on this text box, for example. All right. Of course, HTML5 provides lots of additional stuff, and I'm not able to say everything about this stuff here right now because of lack of time, and I'm going to show you just basic list of additional information, additional input types that you can just browse yourself if you wish. Now, if there is no question, let me show you introduction to CSS. Cascaded style sheets. So how they are organized? What's their syntax? Their syntax is quite basic. It's composed from selector and declaration. A declaration is composed from set of properties and values assigned to these properties. These items in declarations are separated with semicolon. The specific selector can be assigned to a specific element or specific ID of element or class. So a bit further, I will show it how to do. But first, let me say how to connect an extended CSS file. Basically, it's not very complicated. You can use specific element link, and you have to provide a path to this CSS file, provide an attribute type, and relation. Rel is a relationship between this page and a style document. Also, you can embed CSS within your HTML5. This is, of course, a portion of the file, a head of HTML file, and you can have an element style with attribute type equal to text/CSS. How you, according to this selector, will be selected specific elements with your HTML document with your CSS? Well, first one, a basic way, type of, it depends on the type of the selector, and the basic and useful type of selector is so-called universal. It highlights all elements of the document. It might be this asterisk. Another more useful selector of specific element, so-called type selector. It's connected to specific tag, for example, H1 or P paragraph. Another one is class selector. Elements selected by specific class, so by the value of attribute class with this element. For example, it will be maybe done like this. This will be for all elements with attribute myClass, with all attribute class specified to value myClass, and this one will be attached to all elements P paragraph where the class attribute is specified to value myClass. The similar way it works for IDs. The syntax is a bit different, and this for selectors, they are more or less rare but you can still use them for specific cases. For example, if you want to attach specific style to specific element, which is supposed to be after specific element, strictly or not strictly. As you can see, you can specify several rules with these selectors, and some of them might be applied to the whole document, some of them may be applied to only specific elements. That's why there's supposed to be some sort of priorities, which particular rules have to be applied to specific particular element. This might be highlighted by rules priorities. So you can see them here. The first is the last rule, because if there will be a last specified rule, it will be more applicable. Another is specificity rule, because if the more specific selector, then more specific will be property. And also you can affect on these rules by providing important additional keyword there. And by this you can try to pop up some rules with the priority. Probably you saw these elements somewhere in CSS. Also, some properties might be inherited with inheritance, because once you specified, for example, font family or font for basic or general element over whole page, it will be automatically inherited by the all elements of your page unless you override it. But some properties are not inherited. For example, border settings. Well, if you wish to understand which particular property is assigned to this particular element, just check out if these properties are inherited or not. So also, if you wish to see how it works, I can show you additional interesting thing. For example, even with our even basic, even with Internet Explorer, I can just press F12 button, and I can see very interesting stuff. First, I can see the specific CSS elements connected to my web page, and also I can see specific element. I can check what this is H1, and I can see which properties are assigned according to this CSS to this particular element. This usually works, and also this element is highlighted here as well. Quite useful stuff. And with this additional add-on for Firefox and Chrome, you can have similar functionality there. And also, even with Chrome, you can also press. You have this functionality here by using this toolbox. This is here, so you can just see these block elements and see how they are organized and connected. All right. Now let's briefly see how to specify properties with CSS. Well, you can specify color of specific element by using different schemes like RGB, red, green, blue, like this. I suppose this is quite obvious. You can do the same with hex codes and with color names. Quite modern stuff is using hue, saturation, and lightness. Also, this is more interesting for web designers, probably. With modern versions of CSS, you can also use so-called alpha channel or opacity for these colors, and you are able to specify how opaque it should be. For example, if you would like to specify opacity with RGB, you have to use RGBA instead of RGB here, and provide an additional number here, 4 number, which is supposed to be opacity of this particular element. Also, you can specify by this property color, the color of this element, and with background color, you can specify the background color of this box or element. With texts, you can have different abilities to specify additional features. But first, you have to start with typeface. There are usually three typefaces in web design: serif, sans serif, and monospace. Why? Just because to have another font faces, another fonts, all of these fonts have to be installed on all devices what will be able to connect to your website. And these fonts, there's an ability what these fonts will be installed on every such device, or at least one of these fonts will be installed to provide typeface serif. Also, serif and sans serif, they are different. The difference between these fonts, what serif has special marks at the ends of each letter. Sans serif does not have these marks. And monospace fonts, they have equal sizes for all characters, for all literals. Additionally, you can specify such parameters like weight of font, style, and stretch. Can anybody say what's the difference, for example, between italic and oblique? Both of them have some sort of angle, yeah? But with oblique, this is just basically angled font. But with italic, this font was especially make it more smooth. The letters, they have more round sides. So you can specify these parameters with CSS like this, and you can also have additional parameters. For example, you can capitalize or transformate all characters in your text. You can underline them, or you can remove any text decoration if you wish. You can specify distance between lines. You can specify distance between letters and between words in spaces. You can specify text align, center, justify, left, right. You can also specify vertical align. But be careful, this vertical align is not related to the whole text within box. It's related to more pictures and text. Text indent is usually used for moving this text to the left or to the right, or highlighting the first line of this text. And also, in some browsers, text shadow is supported. But not in all, unfortunately. With links, you can specify additional decorations, like the color of link, the visited link, which was previously visited. The hover link is when the mouse hover of this link, and active, then you're just pressing button on this link. Or if it's a touch device, you can just press your finger on this item. Unfortunately, hover will not work in there because these devices, unfortunately, are still unable to catch if you're just not pressed your finger or just approaching your finger to the surface. With boxes, basically what's the kind of box? It might be basically div tag. You can specify these parameters. Their meaning probably is quite obvious. You can specify their size, or with these items, with these attributes, you can specify limits for this size. And also with this parameter, with this attribute property, you can say what's going to be done with the text if it goes beyond this box. If it's supposed to be just hidden or it's supposed to be shown scroll. With border, margin, and padding, I provided you quite fabulous picture which highlights where is it supposed to be. This might be even useful if you are working with tables, but be also useful when you're working with your own layouts. So you can see what this is the text, and this blue line, blue box highlights where this text ends. The padding is some white space between this text and the border of this text. The border might have special style. It might be you can specify the width of its border. You can specify it will be dotted or dashed, and you can specify its color, of course. Additionally, you can specify margin. It's a white space surrounding this border. So this might be useful for divs. This might be useful for table items, of course. You can change the behavior of your elements from inline to block and vice versa. So you can use a property display for this with CSS. So by this property, you can, for example, change the appearance of list, because it's a block element. But if you will specify what it's supposed to be inline, this list will be not vertical; it will be horizontal. Question? Oh, sorry. Some elements you can hide from the screen. You can use property visibility in CSS, and you can basically hide them, but the place might be retained. But if you want to hide them completely, you basically collapse them. CSS3, which is supposed to be a part of additional to HTML5, provides additional properties for border images, or quite fabulous box shadows and rounded corners for boxes. So by using these properties, you can, for example, you can create rounded boxes in your web design. With lists, tables, and forms, you can have these properties. You can specify a style for lists, or if it's ordered or unordered, you can use different values or bullets for them. Or you can specify special images for these bullets, for example. With tables, you can use these properties to specify the appearance, of course. And with forms, you have to follow some sort of guidelines. You have to use general style for all nested elements, because elements are nested with your forms. And be careful with alignment of your elements, because if you have some sort of controls, it's better to align them carefully to show to user in the right order. Now let's go to layout. Not much time, but I hope I will manage this. So you saw we have basic elements for layout in our text and images with HTML design. These are div and span. And also, you can use so-called iframe, for example, for Google Maps embedding. How you can position them? You have several abilities to position them. You can use property position with CSS and provide specific values to this property. The basic one is static. It's a usual position of this element. Relative allows you to move this element a bit from its original normal position. Absolute provides you ability to specify its coordinates according to the browser window. And fixed allows you to fix this element on specific position in the browser window as well. The difference is that here you will be able to scroll this element, and here it will stay the same position. And don't forget, if your elements will overlap with this absolute and fixed positioning, to use Z order property to specify which order they're supposed to be organized, let's say vertically. You can float elements on the left or on the right to specify in which order they're supposed to be organized. And you can specify where they have to be cleared. What's the difference between these two items? The clearance, for example, for the third item means that there's supposed to be no additional element there on the left. And this is supposed to be, if there will be clearance for this element, the the display of this element will be moved from the left picture to the right one. So you can attack on this by this clear property. Also, you have an ability to specify or use two approaches for layouting your HTML documents: fixed layout and liquid layout. Now it became more and more popular liquid layout because we have varieties of screen resolutions, but it provides you lots of problems. You can see it here. Also, you can follow this link, which contains quite useful website for creating a layout for professional websites. It contains ready-to-use CSS, and you just basically can follow specific guidelines of this site to create your own layout quite easily. There are lots of additional CSS frameworks in the web, so you can just basically find them with Google and you can try to use them. Also, if you don't like to, you can create your own layout on your own. If you're a fail, for example, if you do not have enough time to work with all of this CSS stuff and all of these divs and other things, can design layout with tables. But this is very, very, very old style. I do not recommend you to use it. And finally, HTML5 layout, what it provides to us. For example, this was before the HTML5. This is some sort of layout of page. We have a body, we have some sort of parent container where everything is contained with the header, the main content of the site, the sidebar, and a footer. With HTML5, we have more ready-to-use elements which are supposed to be organized like this. So, for example, with HTML5, you can see the difference. Yes? So you will be able to use specific elements instead of general divs with specific ID or style or class. So that's the basic idea. But HTML5, as you saw, it's a quite fresh standard, and it's still there are lots of ongoing work with HTML5, and how can you deal with the old versions, with old browsers with HTML5. You can use this approach. You can specify this CSS where these elements are provided as a basically display block property, so to show that they are block elements, not inline elements. And by attaching this specific script currently is, will be useful for browsers previous than Internet Explorer 9. And how it works, and this script can be downloaded here. How it basically works, it defines all of these elements with JavaScript. And browsers, even old browsers, now they are more or less say they somehow understand that these elements exists. So that's how it basically works. So currently I'm finished. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. And if you still have some additional questions, feel free to ask. Now, that's all what I want to say to you now. Thank you very much.